vote, which would be AB 120, a budget junior bill, and then we're going to have an informational hearing on the Memorandum of Understanding, which has been reached between Bargaining Unit 6, correctional officers, and the administration. So we're going to start with AB 120.
Good morning, Mr. Chair and members. Amy Costa with the Department of Finance. As you stated, the bill before you is AB 120. It is an amendment to the current year Budget Act. This bill provides funding to the Secretary of State and local county elections officials in support of administering the June primary and signature verification for the November general election. AB 120 appropriates $16.2 million to the Secretary of State, of which $115,000 can be used by the Secretary of State for the state operations in support of in support of the June primary election and signature verification efforts. The bill requires the Secretary of State to develop a formula to determine the funding available to counties. And that formula is to be based on two things. One is the number of signatures submitted to the county for verification, and the second factor is the number of eligible voters within that county. The Secretary of State must notify the counties of this funding formula by May 1st of 2016. To be eligible for this funding, counties must do a number of things. One, counties must comply with several provisions of election code related to the June primary, and that includes establishment of precincts, providing ballots and other supplies to the polling places, and the posting of certain notifications at the polling place. Second, they have to demonstrate that the initiative petitions filed on or before May 20th will be counted and the county determination will be provided in turn to the Secretary of State no later than May 27th. Lastly, counties must prepare and certify any costs related to the primary election and the verification of initiatives to the controller prior to August 1st of 2016. With that, I'm happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, Ms. Costa. I know this proposal comes subsequent to a joint hearing that we had at Senator Roth's committee, along with Senator Allen's Elections Committee, where we heard from the Secretary of State make a number of, I thought, compelling arguments, among them that the June primary presents California with an opportunity we have not seen in nearly a half century, which is a very competitive race on both the Democratic and Republican side in the presidential primary. And I'm not sure if it was all that recognized at the time when we, the legislature, made the determination that all the initiatives would be on the November ballot, and that such the deadline for that would probably be June 30th. And with an inordinate number of proposed initiatives, there would be all that signature confirmation process to determine whether the measure would qualify for November, all happening at the same time as a competitive June primary, which no one could have predicted. So those, and then also something like 600,000 new voter registrants since the beginning of this calendar year. Is that about right?
Yes, as we talked about in the previous informational hearing that you referenced, when we analyzed the Secretary of State's request, there were a number of novel factors really happening here in California. You've referenced one, which is increased voter interest in the presidential primary, increases in voter registration, the move to initiatives in November, as well as the number of initiatives still seeking verification. So based on our analysis for the current year, those unique factors have brought this bill before you.
Now, looking at the number of requirements that a county elections official would need to meet to be eligible for the reimbursement, is there anything new among them? I mean, wouldn't they have to comply with all of these different points just by law in any case?
Yes, exactly. So these are current election statutes, and as I referenced, they have to do with the number of precincts, the organization of precincts within a local jurisdiction, the number of ballots provided at a polling place, the delivery of those ballots, some of the notification requirements in current statute at polling places. And it did come up in the context of the staff analysis at the informational hearing, some of the issues related to the actual administration of the June primary and ensuring that that was accomplished.
Not to digress too much, but among them is establishing precinct boundaries. Just to reassure any voters who may be watching this at some point, to reassure them that California will in no way be duplicating the more than mishaps of voters' experience in Arizona recently, where people waited 4, 5, 6 hours in line because Arizona had reduced the number of precincts and opportunities for voting. Can you give us a little bit of additional information as to what the requirements, the legal requirements are for counties in terms of how many precincts and voting booths that they'll have?
I believe there's a representative from the Secretary of State's office, and I'd like to invite him up. It does reference current law regarding the organization of precinct of polling places and precincts based on the number of registered voters, but I'll defer to the Secretary's office.
I appreciate that. Thank you.
Good morning. I'm Jan Aline. I'm the Chief of the Elections Division for the Secretary of State's office.
If you could get just a little closer to your microphone, please. You can pull it up to you. There you go.
There is a requirement in the California Elections Code that states that precincts can only be 1,000 voters, so that code section has not been changed. That is still the code section that'll be for this election.
If I remember correctly from some of the news reports in Arizona, they had 20,000?
20,000, sir.
And we're at 1,000.
Correct.
Just to reassure everybody, that's not going to repeat itself in California. Questions? Yes. Senator Nielsen.
I understand that the counties are owed now somewhere around $77 million for prior elections up to 2011. And certainly the accountability provided is good that they have to justify. But what comfort do counties now have that the state's going to any more timely pay them? We really leave the counties hanging out considerably, a tremendous amount of money. How will this legislation give the counties any comfort that they're going to any more timely be paid and not be held in arrears so long by the state as the state have left them in arrears so much in the past?
I would note, Senator, that not actually in this bill, but as part of the current year Budget Act, there was a work group formed on the issue of local election mandates with the legislative analysts, the Department of Finance, and the Secretary's office. They have convened those meetings, and I believe the report is due in September of 2016 with recommendations from that group on the issue of local election mandates.
So not in this bill, but prospectively around September 2016, there will be some kind of recommendations?
Yes, and I believe the statute also calls for there to be subsequent reports by this working group after, I believe it's every primary election. So it's an ongoing reporting requirement for this group with the first report due in September.
But reporting requirements bring no comfort. It's action that we're looking for. So I gather we're going to be focused on that, I hope. I hope the counties are going to speak up to it here today because they need to be very loud. I intend to be focused on it because we need to fess up and meet our obligation to our counties. Thank you.
Thank you, Senator Nielsen. Points very well taken. Counties have been very patient with us. To the governor's credit, of course, he has been attending to these unfunded mandates that we've had on the books for so long, trying to clear out what should be reimbursed, what shouldn't, but for those dollars that are owed, we need to be true to our word. Senator Morlock and then Senator Stone.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I was just curious why we're using last year's trailer bill. Is it an urgency opportunity, or why not just include this in?
I've got my answer, but I'll let Ms. Costa offer hers.
As we discussed actually in the joint hearing, and the counties testified during the joint informational hearing between the subcommittee and the Elections Committee of the Senate, I think counties are looking for a signal from the state that we would be willing to help them with these costs, and they testified to that effect at that joint hearing. So, as we stated in that hearing, as I testified, the full request was actually more than the bill before you, and through our analysis, we really bifurcated the cost between current year, which is what you see before you in AB 120, and some more budget year cost associated mostly with the voter information guide. That's not before you in this bill because we will have that discussion as part of our normal budgetary process.
Thank you, Ms. Costa. And Senator Morlock, just to put a point on Ms. Costa's comments, we had asked at this informational hearing in Senator Roth's committee what were the possibilities for modes of funding with the significantly higher requests that the Secretary of State was asking at that time. And one was to do a Budget Bill Junior, which is before us today, or that there could be some augmentation in the governor's May revise, which would deal more with the budget year for expenses that would be relative to November. But I think Ms. Costa's comment that we do want to thoughtfully, with respect to Senator Nielsen's concerns, more than just say what the counties want us to say, but actually do something and to do it now.
So we're sending a signal, which is a positive one.
Signal and some dollars.
And so I'm wondering two things, Mr. Chair. The first is, why don't we have like a matching component if we're going to make the county registrars go through this process of filling in all the necessary forms? Why don't we say, instead of this amount of 16.3, why don't we also match it by, say, half, another 8 million, to start paying down the 70 million? Do we have a plan to pay down the 70? And I'm just thinking maybe we could start now with even a stronger incentive.
I'll take that as a question for the administration, Ms. Costa.
Just to ensure that I understand your question, Senator, are you speaking about the mandate?
Right,
okay.
right. We start showing a good faith effort to pay it down, and let's throw in another 8 million and start the process.
Again, as I referenced, I mean, we did in the current Budget Act create this process in which we have a work group between the Legislative Analyst's Office, the Secretary of State, and Department of Finance to look at the issue of the local mandates. And their first report, which does include recommendations, is not due until September. And so I think part of it was, allowing the process that was set forth in the current budget to come to fruition before we continued those conversations. And again, the bill before you, AB 120, deals with the most immediate issue that was discussed in the informational hearing, really the funding for the Secretary of State as well as the counties that are more of an immediate need for this particular election cycle.
So the first step then is just to show that we're going to participate and pay our share, and then down the road, report or not, we still owe them 70 million, and we'll start doing both somewhere along the way. We'll pay down the balance and we'll stay current.
It would be part of the budget process to determine whether or not those local mandates are paid in one amount as part of, the appropriation authority of the legislature in conjunction with the administration. So we do have the reporting requirement in September and subsequent reporting requirements, but as for the appropriation, that's to be determined.
Okay, well, in business, we always said, what do you do for an encore? And so, once we start this, we should be deliberate about resolving both, and that would be my comment, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Senator Morlock. Before we go forward, we are going to establish our quorum. If you could call the roll, please.
Leno,
Here.
Nielsen, Allen, Anderson, Bell, Block, Glaser, Hancock, Mitchell, Monning, Morlock,
Present.
Nguyen, Pan, Habley, Roth, Stone,
Here.
Wolk. We have a quorum.
Thank you. We have our quorum. I know that Senator Pavley is chairing another committee at this time on which a number of our committee members also sit. Senator Stone.
Good morning, Mr. Chairman and members and staff. Good morning. Before I make a couple comments on AB 120, I also was going to talk about the $77 million mandate that stems back to 2011. Is the Department of Finance and LAO both in agreement that $77 million is what is owed to counties?
I'm looking to my colleague with the analyst's office because I personally have not been involved in the work group meeting, so I don't know if this subject has been covered.
Yeah, Nick Schroeder with the Legislative Analyst's Office. That is the correct amount of money that's currently owed on the
Okay.
outstanding mandates.
So, this was a mandate that went back, Mr. Chairman, to 2011. And it's just, it's very frustrating for counties that are struggling. At least I can speak for the county of Riverside that Senator Roth and I reside in. The county right now is actually laying off people because of budgetary issues. And there could not be a better time for the county to realize money that's owed to them as expeditiously as possible. So I would enjoy working with the chairman in this committee to expedite the $77 million to the counties that could really use this relief. I don't know if it's possible if we could amend this bill and just put it in there. That's certainly up to the chairman, but if it's money the state owes, and they've owed it for a long time, the counties are struggling, let's give them their money, especially with this big election right now where maybe somebody can tell me how many initiatives do we think are going to be on the ballot this year when the threshold for getting initiatives on the ballot is very low. Does anybody have an idea how many initiatives we're going to see?
James Schwab, the Secretary of State's office. We expect for November anywhere between 19, 20, or 21 initiatives to be on the ballot.
Okay. So, Mr. Chairman, Riverside County was one of the first counties. In fact, I think it was the first county in the state of California to actually use electronic machines. And unfortunately, the Secretary of State decertified those machines, even though there was never one incident of fraud associated with those machines, but we had to comply. So we're using paper. And so when you have 21 initiatives, we have to put through the machine 3 or 4 pages, which takes a lot of time, and time equates to money. And so my concern is whether $16.3 million and taking away $115,000 for the Secretary of State, which is understandable, will be an appropriate amount of money. The first question. The second question is, how will it be equitably distributed? My concern in many committees when we're allocating money for counties, I want to make sure that it's not going to 1 or 2 large counties at the expense of the smaller rural and slightly more urbanized counties like Riverside County. I want to make sure everybody gets their fair shake. So can you explain to me the distribution formula?
Sure. Let me start with your first question, Senator. The amount, preliminarily, the Secretary of State's office provided us with a range, actually, for the county costs associated with this bill. And the range was between $12.9 million and $19.3 million. In consultation with Senate staff, this represents the midpoint, basically, between those two estimates. As for how the funding will be distributed, the bill requires the Secretary of State's office actually to develop a formula based on a number of factors that we felt were relevant to determining the workload associated. And one of them is the number of registered voters within that county, as well as their work on signature verification as an appropriate proxy for the work that the counties would have completed and been seeking reimbursement for.
Okay. And so can you tell me, is there going to be a deadline to file for these expenses? And will there be any kind of a deadline placed in this bill that will ensure the counties that they're going to get the funding that has been requested and hopefully allocated? In other words, are they going to have to wait another 5 years again, or is there some protection in this bill that they're going to get paid for this work, additional work that we're asking them to do?
There are several deadlines in the bill that I believe are relevant to your question. First, that the counties provide receipts and proof of the costs incurred between April 26th and July 15th, so it's for a specified period of time. The Secretary of State's office has to provide to counties the actual formula used for distribution by May 1st of 2016. And then lastly, counties have to provide their reimbursement request to the controllers. I believe it's by August 1st.
Okay.
August 1st of 2016. So those timelines are built within the bill. So to your point.
Okay, so the timelines are there for providing the billing, but there's no timeline for the state to have to actually pay the bill. So would it be appropriate to say that by January of 17 that the state shall fund any claims that the state has determined to be valid to be dispersed?
It is a current year appropriation, so the fact would be that it would go out in the current year. And because there is a claims deadline within here through our finance process, what would happen is any of the funds remaining would be deemed as savings, and we would, review that with the Secretary of State's office as part of our normal fall budget process.
Then one last question, and again, I hope we consider putting a drop dead date that the state has to pay so that the counties don't remain nervous on this. What happens if the claims exceed the $16.3 million? Is that something that you're just going to put a ceiling on, or you have to come back to the committee for more money if it's necessary?
At this point, it's the midpoint of the estimates provided by the Secretary of State's office, and, I defer to the Secretary's office, but I think it's not completely known how many counties will actually apply for this, because this has happened relatively quickly. We had, an informational hearing last week, and this bill, and it is based on the request from the Secretary's office, but it's preliminary to know how many counties will be impacted and who, in turn, would apply for the funding.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
And additionally, I think to that question, we could offer that if we knew in the current budget year that there were additional expenses beyond the 16.3, that we could even do a supplemental appropriations.
Thank you.
Any other questions? We have a motion by Senator Roth. Any public comment?
Good morning. Thank you. I'm Jill Levine. I'm the Registrar of Sacramento County, and I'm also the co-ledge chair of the California Association of Clerk and Election Officials. And I'd like to just say we support this bill wholeheartedly. If anybody would have told me a year ago what we would be doing now with our registration numbers, for example, just over the weekend, we received over 900 registrations online. That doesn't count the paper copies that are still coming into our office. Tomorrow we'll be receiving our first petition, and next week they've already scheduled a second petition. So we very much encourage your yes vote on this bill. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good morning, Mr. Chair and members. Karen Lang on behalf of the Fresno County Board of Supervisors and several other counties that love this bill but don't know it yet. We urge your aye vote today and thank the Department of Finance and the committee for bringing this forward right now. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Lang.
Good morning, Chair and members. Dorothy Holzen with the California State Association of Counties here in strong support of this measure. As was noted by several of the committee members, counties are facing additional cost pressures, not only because of the unfunded state mandates, but also because of special elections for vacancies in the legislature and Congress that unfortunately the state no longer pays for, while other local agencies do pay for their portion of special elections. Also, as many of these committee members know well, we are also facing aging technology and equipment for our voting system statewide. And so this injection of funding to deal with the immediate crisis or concerns with our primary and the November ballot processing is very much appreciated, and we again support this bill. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Holzman.
Good morning, Mr. Chairman, members. Paul Smith with the Rural Counties Association. Also on behalf of the Urban Counties Caucus, I want to echo the comments that my colleague Dorothy had just said. We really appreciate the legislature coming forth. A lot of times you get chastised for not being proactive, but we think this is a good proactive attempt to get those funds into counties to conduct a very meaningful election that is going to, I think, surprise us all, both with the costs and the participation rate. So again, thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Smith.
Ed Behrens on behalf of the Los Angeles County Board of Supervisors in support of the measure.
Thank you, sir.
Nicole Wertelman on behalf of the Ventura County Board of Supervisors, also supporting.
Thank you. As long as we're passing thanks around, we should also thank the Secretary of State for approaching the legislature and the administration to recognize that this is an uncommon election season. And as such, counties will be experiencing additional costs. So, no other questions from the committee? Please call the roll.
AB 120, motion is due pass. Leno?
Aye.
Leno, aye. Nielsen?
Aye.
Nielsen, aye. Allen? Anderson? Bell? Bell, I. Block? Block, I. Glazer? Glazer, I. Hancock? Hancock, I. Mitchell? Monning? Monning, I. Morlock? Morlock, I. Wynn? Pan? Pan, I. Pavley? Roth? Roth, I. Stone? Stone, I. Woke? Woke, I.
The bill does have sufficient votes. We're going to keep the roll open for all the members who may yet be able to join us and add on. Thank you, Secretary of State. Thank you, Ms. Costa. Thank you, Mr. Schroeder. So our second item on the agenda today is this informational hearing on the MOU with bargaining unit number 6.
Good morning, Eric Stern with the Department of Finance. The bill before you is SB 95, which would approve the tentative agreement reached between the state and bargaining unit 6, which covers almost 27,000 employees, correctional peace officers. The agreement includes it's important to note, the agreement includes the governor's retiree health care reform proposals that address the state's $75 billion unfunded health care liability over the long term, which includes those proposals include the employees in the state making matching pre-funding contributions to a trust fund, as well as making some changes to the benefit structure for new hires who are hired after January 1st of next year, including a longer vesting schedule to qualify for those benefits, as well as a smaller contribution that the state will provide, which is consistent with the other MOUs that we've reached over the last year with our other bargaining units. In the area of compensation, bargaining unit 6 members will receive 3 separate 3% general salary increases over the term of the agreement for a total of 9%. The length of the agreement is 3 years old and will date back to July 3rd, 2015 and expires on July 2nd, 2018. And we believe this is a fair deal for the state and bargaining unit 6 members, and we support the agreement. Appreciate your support.
Thank you, Mr. Stern. Could you talk to us a little bit about ceiling on the employer contribution for retiree health? There's a ceiling for the employer contribution? Is that accurate?
Ceiling, or just what the state contribution is going to be? So what we've agreed to do, consistent with the other bargaining units, is we're going to phase in employee and employer matching contributions till we reach the actuarially determined normal cost amount. So what that comes out to for the 6 members in the state, which we're beginning on July 1st of 2016 under the contract, it'll be phased in, reaching a total of 4% over the next 3 years. So 4% of pay for the employees and 4% for the state.
Got it. Thank you.
Mr. Stern said, the agreement also reduces the OPEB benefit for future employees. So I'm not sure if that's what you meant by the cap, so that it would reduce the actual benefit that's received by employees in the future, and they would have to work for a longer period of time to receive that benefit.
The vesting schedule has been extended.
Correct.
Right. I also see that there is physical fitness pay. Is this anything new for this bargaining unit, or do we see it in any other bargaining units?
Right. It's in a couple bargaining units, including CHP. So the correctional officers have had a physical fitness pay differential that they've had for many, many years. And what we've done in this contract is that it was a separate pay differential that they would get on a monthly basis for having being certified as being physically fit by a doctor once a year. And what we did in this contract through the course of negotiation was we actually rolled that pay differential into the base pay. So it's instead of a separate sort of standalone pay item, it's included in the base pay now.
So that would mean there are probably no requirements or thresholds to be met?
Correct, right. It was a pay differential that everyone essentially gets in the bargaining unit, and it became a pretty uniform benefit. So as we look at pay differentials over all of our state employees, we're having a kind of a long discussion about what sort of pay differentials we can roll into the base pay, what should be separate, things like that. So this was sort of part of that conversation.
The uniform allowance would be similar?
Uniform allowance is separate under sort of some of the rules of our, of sort of pensionability and what can count towards pensions. Uniforms are a separate allowance, but we did increase the uniform allowance for the correctional officers as well.
And given this is now, I think, the third MOU which you've negotiated to include participation in the unfunded liabilities of retiree health care, this will probably be a model for others going forward?
Right, absolutely. And this is definitely what's, so last year we approved bargaining units 9 and 10, our scientists and engineers. What's, I think, most significant about this one is this is a very significantly large group of employees. So this makes a very big dent in our long-term goals to reduce that unfunded liability and deal with that cost structure going forward.
And then my last question would be, we have a draft analysis here, though we also have a copy of the bill, but it's not the final. Will there be any changes between what we're looking at now and?
Not to my knowledge.
Okay. Senator Morlock.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Mr. Stern, you and I have had this discussion previously, but I appreciate the fact that you're addressing the retiree medical, but you're not getting sizzle. I would prefer that instead of the employee paying 4% and the employer paying 4% at the end of the day, that the state should be paying the entire 8%. And we should reduce the amount of the raises by the same amount. So at the end of the day, you still have the same out-of-pocket cost. So we don't have, say, 3% raises. We have 2.5%, and et cetera, as it goes up. That way we're not adversely impacting the pension plan unfunded liability. So I see this as half a loaf, and that's why I'll probably, if it comes before us, that's why I'll be voting no. But I want to encourage you as you negotiate with the others, we can do a little better. That's just that's what we did in Orange County, and we had union agreement. It worked out great. We reduced our unfunded liability, Mr. Chair, by 71%, from $1.4 billion to $412 million. So if you can reduce an unfunded liability by 71% with some other changes, that would save this state $50 billion overnight. So I just see that as a stronger, more aggressive way to deal with this and protect our pensions, which is another problem. Because I'm looking at, I'm going to be here for a while, theoretically, and I'm looking at a minimum wage increase. I'm looking at a bond measure in November. I'm looking at raises, and I'm looking at CalPERS increasing our pension contributions. I'm just trying to figure out how it all fits coming up in future years, especially when we don't really try to encourage growth in this state. So I'm getting nervous as an accountant. I'm just getting nervous. So I raise those points, Mr. Chair. Thank you very much. Thank you, Mr. Stern.
Mr. Stern, I think Senator Morlock is offering his services in moonlighting capacity at the bargaining table.
I'd be happy to work with Mr. Stern. He's a wonderful guy.
Senator Stone and then Senator Hancock.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And as we know, this has been in a series of hours, if not days, of negotiation. It's give and take on both sides. And I was involved in pension reform in the county of Riverside at the height of the crisis, when the county was paying 100% of the pension contributions for our general employees and for public safety. And we just couldn't afford it anymore. Our pension liabilities were increasing. So we not only required our employees to pay into their pension plans, but we came up with a second tier, which I believe you have as well. So just a few questions. And I want to applaud the CCPOA membership for agreeing to kind of set the bar a little higher now in paying for pension contributions. They're paying 4%. The state's going to match the 4%. So that 4%, what is it going to do to our pension liability? How much will it impact it, if you don't mind? The first question. The second one is, can you just give me a little bit more details on the second tier as far as what the percentage is, the date of retire, how many years you have to, is it 3% at 60, 3% at 55, a little bit more detail on the second tier as it compares to the present tier.
Sure. So let me take the second question first then. So the pension, you're talking about the pension reforms that we did. Yes. So in 2012, we passed PEPRA, the Public Employees Pension Reform Act, which took effect for new employees who were hired into the system after January 1st, 2013. And for the miscellaneous employees, for state employees, the formulas were ranged from 2% at 55, 2% at 60. We did a sort of a mid-step pension reform around 2011. But for new miscellaneous employees, non-safety employees, it's 2% at 62 with a 3-year final compensation period. We also put a cap on the amount of pensionable compensation you can have, which was initially tied to the Social Security contribution base, which is somewhere around $120,000 today. For safety members, it varied a little bit, but it's mostly went from 3% at 60 was sort of the standard, or 3% at 50, I'm sorry, was sort of the standard for CHP and our peace officers. We gradually shifted away in 2011, lowered that a little bit, but then PEPRA made it can range a little bit, but it can go from 2% at 57. So 57 was the new minimum retirement, normal retirement age, up to 2.7% at 57.
Okay.
So it varies by some of the different bargaining units, and across the state too, for the local governments that are impacted by that too.
And so the savings to the pension plan by their contributions, what does that equate to?
Right. So for state employees, PEPRA also increased. To some bargaining units, it had increased the pension contributions that the employees make by a percent or 2%. Most state employees were already, we've traditionally, unlike local government, state employees have never traditionally really had a pickup of the contribution. So rank and file miscellaneous employees have been paying about 8% since around 2011. Which is approximately half of the normal costs already. So that was sort of the standard that we set in PEPRA, was to have employees contribute half the normal costs for pensions. It was mostly a bigger impact in local government, though, where there were a lot of pickups being done that the employees weren't paying their quote-unquote share.
Well, in our county, just by virtue of doing those pension reforms, we saved our county, which has a $5 billion budget a year, $100 million a year, which was not easy to achieve, but I appreciate our public safety groups and our general employee groups for participating. And let me just conclude, Mr. Chairman, by saying that, CCPOA members, they're part of our public safety team. And they have a very dangerous job. They're working with the most dangerous people that are incarcerated today. They're at risk of significant injury and death. And I think that this is a good negotiated contract, arm's length contract that took some time to negotiate. I think it's fair. I appreciate the fact that they're paying into their pensions like other employee groups are. It will set the standard now for others to follow suit as we attempt to reduce our pension liabilities. So I want to thank the CCPOA for negotiating in earnest on this, and also with our staff and the governor for holding a tough line and trying to negotiate with them. And I'll be supporting it today.